My MacBook Air 2020 M1, it has served me so well, but it's basically filled up. It just wasn't enough to keep up with the upgrades that I was making to my videos. And because I actually want to become a full-time content creator, because this is actually my goal, I got this, which is significantly more powerful. I'll basically be doing all of my editing, creative work off of this new MacBook. Glory to Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God, for blessing me and providing for me to be able to do this. But I'm very excited, very, very excited. It's truly a huge blessing. You're not locked in. And I wasn't locked in, but as is the case with every point in my life where I wasn't locked in, where I was unfocused, like I wasn't actually making progress towards my goals, almost every single time, it usually came down to one constraint. The primary operating factor, whether you act in accordance with your goals and your values, is purpose, is if you have a driving force behind you. And true purpose is simply a byproduct of clarity. You aren't acting consistently in the way that you wish you were because you don't know what it would mean to act consistently. You're not clear on your next steps. And I've seen this in my life. I'm sure you can probably relate, but I will push off doing something because in my head it's kind of ill-defined. I don't actually know, like I haven't mapped out in my head the exact steps to complete what I know I need to get done, and so I keep pushing it off. But then I sit down to do it and it takes way less time than I previously anticipated, even less time than it took me to wait to start. Really quickly, just want to throw it out there that if you found any value from my videos or you like the videos that you see, please consider donating and supporting the channel in that way. There's a link in the description. It helps me to be able to make better videos more consistently and hopefully providing more and more value to you. And if that's not something you want to do, just drop a comment. I'm excited to hear your guys' thoughts. And so often the primary limiting factor when it comes to being in a rut or being locked in is true clarity on what your next steps look like, on what is required to reach the destination you have set out for yourself, on the true underlying motivations of getting there. But pretty much everybody I know, including myself, runs into an issue when it comes to gaining that clarity. My journal is actually under my camera, so I just gotta, there we go. Most people whip out one of these, a journal, and they start to write down their goals. And this is what I did for a long time, but I wasn't actually progressing. I'd be in a rut and then I'd get super motivated and I'd write out all of my goals and I would feel super motivated and then no progress. And 6 months later, I'd look back and I'm like, great, I'm exactly where I was 6 months ago. And this has been a process of learning for me over the past year or so, but pretty recently I've made some good progress in this area, which is how to actually journal effectively, how to journal in a way that actually locks you in. And I want to share with you what I've been learning because it's actually like practical. You can implement this tonight. First of all, as a general rule, you have to journal as if no one else is gonna read it. And I know that might be like, duh. And you're like, of course no one's gonna read my journal. And maybe you don't relate to this, but when I journal for a long time, I would kind of write it as if when I died, maybe someone was gonna go back and find my old journals. If someone were to look through it, it would look some type of way, but you can't do that. And you can't do that because what is necessary to journal productively is to confront and articulate the truths that you've been avoiding and keeping in your head and not on paper so that you can keep them ill-defined so you don't actually have to confront them. You don't actually have to answer the things that are bothering you. You don't have to think about the bigger questions. Once you realize that that's what you're doing, it's really soul-eating to just let those things that you know you're avoiding live in your head. It's like you know that all you're doing is limiting yourself. And so one of the things I recommend is writing a page of questions that need answering. Before you even put thought into the answers behind the things that you're avoiding, define the things that you're avoiding. I wrote down questions, and these are pertaining to my goals of doing creator entrepreneurship, becoming a full-time content creator. So some of the questions that I wrote down, feel free to take these. What exactly am I trying to build? What am I willing to sacrifice? What can I do to make this goal inevitable? What habits are necessary to have? What am I avoiding? What is the single biggest lever, the single most high leverage action I can take? If I only had 30 minutes a day to work on this goal, what would I do? What is limiting me from that next level? And what system could I use to get ahead one video in my upload schedule? Bear with me here, but like, let's say these things were signs in my mind. I would like glance at them, but I would never fully read the question in my mind and then actually try to answer it. But an example of me using these questions and the principles that I'm talking about, I explicated my goal in the time frame super specifically, and then I broke it down. So what would I have to achieve in 6 months? And so I have that 6-month target. And then I wrote 5 things that I would have to do that would be non-negotiables, that are what's required to hit that 6-month goal. And then I turned, and you should do this, I turned those 5 things into actions. I need better packaging. And so what that's gonna look like is setting aside time for packaging, batching my packaging sessions, so sketching the packaging for multiple videos, and always making sure to make the packaging before I make the video. And then I actually made the schedule, and then I asked myself that question, if I only had 30 minutes a day, and I even limit it to 30 minutes a weekday to do what I needed to do, how would I get a video done a week? And I knew this question, I've heard this question before from people online, but when I actually answered it, I'm like, wait a second, I can do that. I kind of thought it was impossible for me to do that. I thought, oh, that's an interesting idea. But then I put the question on paper and I took those actions, split them up across my week, and wrote down what was necessary, how I would get it done in 30 minutes a day. And I'm like, wait, I can actually do that. And so that becomes internally motivating. That's purpose in and of itself. It's easy to be motivated, and it's even easy to be consistently motivated if you are clear on exactly what the next step is that you have to take and exactly how that connects you to achieving your goal. And then when it comes to journaling so as to be locked in, I want to talk about these 2 questions that I listed. What are you willing to sacrifice, and what are you avoiding? This is huge. You kind of hear like Alex Hormozy, and nothing against Alex Hormozy, he's awesome, but you kind of hear these online gurus or heads and thought leaders of the spaces of like business, productivity, and etc. talk about like, what are you willing to sacrifice? Sacrifice your weekends, da-da-da-da-da. That's fine, whatever. You kind of get into this like YouTube, TikTok brain where you hear it so often that you feel like you're actually asking yourself the question, but just because you're hearing people talk about sacrifice doesn't actually mean you're making any sacrifices. I actually wrote down, what are you willing to sacrifice? And then I was like, intricately going through my day. What actually small things can I get rid of? Like, I'm not gonna get rid of watching YouTube completely, not only because it benefits me, but I don't think that's actually reasonable for me to believe that I'm gonna be able to do that just off the whim. But I was like, I can get rid of certain types of content. I can get rid of the content that's, first of all, just noise, things that's filling up my consciousness and taking my mental bandwidth. And then I can watch certain types of content at certain times. And so debates or politics, I can limit certain types of contents to car rides, or to while I'm editing photos at work, or to while I'm doing another task. I'm not sacrificing all of my friends. But I was just on a call with my buddy, and he was like, it is okay to let certain friendships naturally grow apart. That's gonna happen. And once he kind of made me realize I have my own permission to do that, I was like, I can naturally not engage in social outings that aren't beneficial. If every time I'm hanging out with somebody, we're just talking about people we know or things we did in high school or the past, that's just not actually a relationship that's productive or that's fulfilling. Even if you're not sacrificing whole categories of things, I'm not sacrificing consuming all content or all social outings, you can explicate nuances. I want to be able to sacrifice this and this in these broader categories, and that's still progress. And then what are you avoiding? And I think this is really huge because, similar to what we've already talked about, there is a running tally in my mind of things that I feel like I know I should be doing, but I'm not. And I keep putting them off. It's like, I know I should make a timetable or time block or some time management system. And I know I should do that. That bucket in my mind, I know I should do that. holds a lot of things that keep getting pushed off. And so if you write it on a list of like, okay, I'll be honest with you, I'll just read you my list. What am I avoiding? Making a timetable, putting real effort into a consistent sleep schedule, clearly outlining my actions to achieve my goals, weighing myself every morning, like on the scale, learning to use the drone that I got, coming up with 50 YouTube ideas per week, and getting feedback on my thumbnails before I close the process. And once you make the list of like, oh, okay, these are the things I'm avoiding, you kind of naturally are like, okay, well, I can pretty easily sit down and make a timetable. That's not gonna take all night. And then the next day I could sit down and spend 20 minutes turning on the drone, playing around with it. And you start to like naturally realize that you can actually do this. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Journal in a way where you confront yourself about the things you know you're avoiding, and you'll realize even if what you're aiming for is a little bit more difficult to reach than you anticipated, you are infinitely more capable of getting there. You are far more capable than you think you are. It's just so much more intimidating because everything's ill-defined in your mind. Therefore, providing a justification to put off starting or completing something. What came out of that? You see that? There's like dust that comes out of that. That's interesting. Those are some of the principles that I've learned to journal in a way that actually gets you locked in.